Hello, family. Let's see. I don't know. I guess I'm going to put this one in random rants and we're going to talk about school. Hmm. School. Oh, I love it, right? The student teacher relationship of the student and the teacher is just like a sugar coated version of the slave master relationship. And me personally, I didn't care for school at all. Yeah, I did. I did at all. I went to where did they send me to? One of these Catholic schools. Oh shit! I got in so much trouble, and I got beat up on a regular basis, at least once a week, if I remember. I would literally get physically assaulted by the nuns and the principals and stuff. I mean, it was crazy. Um, and then, of course, like the stuff they teach in there is so stupid. I mean, some of it is useful, don't get me wrong. Well, back in my day, it was useful because we actually learned how to read, we actually learned how to write, and we actually learned math. Um, Geometry, they actually had a course in geometry. It was amazing. And two or three generations before that, they actually taught the kids Latin. Yeah, that's right. The language of the devil, right out of Rome. But if if you consider that's like the basis for the other, what is it, five Romance languages: English, Spanish. I don't know what else comes out of there. French. Oof. If you understand Latin, then you can make sense of what certain words mean. Like, if you, for instance, would be like if you knew that the Latin derivative of the word government means mind control, you might think twice about the ritual of voting. Uh, so they don't really teach this stuff anymore in school. I don't think it's become even more obvious that it's absolute shit. Send your kids to school, but anyway, I I'm referring to where, especially where they gotta dress up in uniforms, because I remember dressing up in a uniform. 2 words: spelling, family, phonetics. It's a critical to be able to maneuver your way around the, what was it? Chapter 7, verse 11 of Genesis said, "Let us send down the languages so we may confuse and divide them." So rather than be confused and divided, it's a good idea to learn how to read and to study some of the root words of the language that we find ourselves presented with, so that we can try to maneuver around that division and deception. But anyway, yeah, uniforms. So what is that? Uni means one, and form is, yeah, it means a form, right? So you're saying that all these kids in this school, through the uniform, are meant to be like carbon copies of the same. They're all uniform. Nobody is unique. Everybody is uniform. So we'll just start with the uniforms. Um, so, yeah. Actually, I'm going to come back to the uniform in just a second because I want to explain like a more foundational level issue I have with the school. And that is also illustrated in the Bible in the Old Testament. I can't remember which book, but it was also quoted by Voltaire, and it was also somebody, like many, many, many people in history have quoted this and saying something to this effect: that give me a child for the first 7 years of his life, and I shall show you the man. Lenin, Stalin, I mean, all these kind of wicked characters have acknowledged this, right? And or give me a child for the first 7 years of his life, and he shall not depart his ways. So once you get them for that first cycle of 7, you've got them kind of locked in there now. So really, no child before the age of 7 should be at all going to any kind of school. It's just really bad idea. It's best to be at home with your parents, at least with your mother, and then your father comes home in the evening, and the parents teach the children. The parents teach the children principles, core values, foundational truths, right from wrong, what is and isn't acceptable, with regards to non-aggression principle and natural law and these kinds of things. And then when they're ready to begin to grasp other things that are like, so you establish that foundation, right? Because if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything, including the bullies on the playground and everything. You're going to fall for all kinds of shit if you don't have this foundation of 7 years at home with the kids. But I see that, like literally, I'm not kidding. I see this in the States, in Canada, in Europe, in Mexico, throughout the Americas. It just seems to be a norm now that when you have a child that you've got to go to work, you being the mother, who ideally should be at home with that child for the first, God, at least 3 years, if not 5, but 7 is best. And they're going away to be raised by the state. By strangers in the daycare. They're being dropped off so mom can go to work. And oftentimes mom has to go to work because oftentimes there's no father in the home. It's another pandemic for real. So yes, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to try to do what you need to do to pay the bills, to keep the roof overhead, the rent paid, the food on the table, and all that stuff. But please bear in mind that the school does not have your child's best interest at heart. The school is a system to create more slaves. The school is a place where your child learns to consider that their mother government, their authority figure of the state, is what you need to adhere to, and it's not at all what you should adhere to as the authority of the Great Spirit and natural law. But this would provide a better foundation if we didn't send our kids off to these schools. I'm going to give you another example, one that really perturbs me. So if there's a cuss word that flies out, please forgive me. It's a little difficult to contain how I really feel when it comes to the children, especially in regards well, you can find this in the school, right? I don't know, family. I don't know. The uniforms that I see these little girls wearing, uniforms, crap, I've already told you what I feel about that for all the kids, but especially with regards to the little girls. I remember wearing one of these uniforms when I was in Catholic school, and my skirt came all the way down to at least an inch below my knees. And now I see 3-year-old girls with miniskirts that barely cover their butt, that don't cover their butt. If they bend over or climb on top of something, it's too much. If I need to point out the obvious, I'm going to point out the obvious. That's too much skin exposure for a child. We, as parents and so-called adults, need to exercise more discernment and caution, to take a note of our surroundings and pull our head out of our ass and stop being so cognitively dissonant because we don't have the courage to face what's right in front of us. And the world is being run by pedophiles. And it's filled with oversexed men who are programmed with pornography and it's a world at this moment that is quite full, has its fair share of, we'll just call it vampire activity. So the sex magic is the generative principle that you'll see when you look at the what do you call that? I always forget the name of that thing, but it represents the Masons, right? And there's that G in the middle, and some people are like, oh no, that stands for God. That stands for the generative principle, the sex magic. And so that's why you see a lot of these cults. That's why you see the so-called Jeffrey Epstein character had committed suicide. Okay, if I want to identify the source of the issue with regards to, let's say, drugs on the street, do I approach the dealer who is matching up the distributor? Or how do I say, where the fuck is Jeffrey Epstein's client list? They're running the world, and they're doing it in various different ways, and they're programming the humans, the vulnerable, gullible, non-discerning, unaware human, average human, is being programmed with their shit. And I just, I'm just saying, family, if that was me, and I had to send my little girl at the age of 3 to a school that required me to put a uniform on her, and if that uniform only came this far down from her fucking crotch, well, honestly, I really don't know what I would do. Honestly, well, one of the first things that comes to mind would be to, I don't know. I'm gonna try to refrain. I'm gonna try to be diplomatic. But I would go and find the people who come up with these ideas for their fucking uniforms, and I would deal with them in a very serious manner, where there would be no confusion about where I stand on that. So, okay, got that off my chest. I want to also just point out the other obvious, I don't know. Well, I went to the Catholic school for I don't know. I think they kicked me out for good finally when I was maybe in the 5th or 6th grade, something like that. Just after the age of, they had me for the first 7 years, and then after that it was like, no, we can't take this anymore. Let her go out, away from us, because she's causing too much problems and she's being too much of a, oh, what's that word? They made a movie out of that too, about these kids. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but somebody that doesn't fit in, a dissident, a troublemaker, somebody that might potentially influence some of the other children who we desire to be programmed to fit into our slave box and our slave programming. Anyhow, well, they kicked me out, and I ended up in the public school where I was learning in the 6th grade everything I had previously learned in the 2nd grade. And already before then, I found school to be like, well, it was just a total joke. I mean, didn't crack a book and made straight A's. Because it's just regurgitation, right? It's nothing valuable, really. I don't think. Anyway, that was my experience in school. And so let's see if we can identify the issue being the school programming our children to be slaves of the state and or church, programming them to be uniformed and compliant and not live up to their unique potential and their unique dreams, plans, contracts, goals, aspirations, desires, then we should provide a space for them to, to go through this sort of learning process without that detrimental, if not deleterious, thing called school. And especially family, if they're asking your children, your little girls, to put on provocative clothing. I'm just saying, picture, you know what I'm talking about, family. I'm sure you do. The little plaid skirts, and then they got those stockings that they pull up. Well, when my stockings, first of all, my uniform in the Catholic school was, like I said, it came down to at least an inch below my knees, maybe more. And the stockings that I wore were real stockings. They were like not pantyhose type of stockings, but stockings that went all the way up to your waist. And now they got them right here below the knee with the skirt way up here. I watched, and there was no skin exposure when I had my uniform on back, 50 years ago. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's no. If you can use your imagination, family, to get to see what this is that I'm picturing, the uniform, picture this in your mind, and then set that image right next to the image of a French maid. And that comes from some of the elite families of Europe where they hired maids inside their mansions in France or Germany or wherever, and they had them dress up in these little seductive, provocative outfits because the masters of the landlords, the elite that lived in this castle that was a way to say at any time they want to, they could just grab you while you're cleaning the house and rape you. It was part of the contract. And many bastard children were born of that. I'll give you one example. There was just one example. But there's just tons and tons and tons and tons. But just one example. This character that we call Adolf Hitler was a bastard child of one of these maids in a French maid outfit inside one of the manors of the Rothschild family. And Adolf Hitler was the bastard child of that, result of that unholy union. And so it's like go back even before that. In England, for instance, go back, say, to the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th century, throughout there, you would have one of these elite families, right? These barons and counts and princes and whatever names they give themselves. And they would, let's say you're a king or whatever, some kind of royal family member or whatever, and you raped one of your French maid house cleaners / sex trade worker, I don't know what you want to call that, and a child was begot out of that union, then it was a bastard child, but you weren't allowed to call it. It was socially unacceptable to call it a bastard child, to call that boy or girl a bastard, because it was part royalty. The child was part royalty. So what you could do to identify that it wasn't a pure blood royalty, but rather a mix with the housemaid or the whatever other servant of the house, is that we called him a little Fitz. A little Fitz, F-I-T-Z. And that's where we get the words Fitzgerald, Fitzpatrick, Fitzsimmons, okay? So, just to give you an idea of where that French-made costume comes from, and making the illustrative analogy between what I see these children wearing to school and the aforementioned uniform of the French maid. So that's my rant about school. Well, it's nowhere near my rant about school, but that's just one thing right there that I just witnessed yesterday, and I made a note that I need to talk about this. If it seems that this must be talked about, if it seems that this is not already self-evident, that you do not dress your 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't care what the age of the girl is, you do not dress her like that and send her out of the home. The school is not what you think it is. And there's predators everywhere who will rape your child with their eyes. I know maybe they don't physically touch, but just the fact that they're looking violates your daughter on an esoteric level, like on an astral plane spiritual level, that's possible to be raped with the eyes. I don't care if you're in a city of 1 million people, and let's just say we live in some utopian world where there's only 1 or 2 pedophiles, as opposed to this dystopian reality, which we actually find ourselves in, which is filled with pedophiles, and it's filled with oversexed people, and it's filled with people who have been watching porn, and it's filled with people who are filled with programs and have no modesty about them and don't understand anything about the sex magic and the generative principle and the need to be modest with covering our bodies. And I'm just if that needs to be said, I'm not sure. It seems like it does. Should be self-evident. There I go, judging again. I said the word should. It feels like it should be self-evident, but just in case it's not, I wanted to rant about that. And thanks for listening. Ciao for now.